Pleasure's all mine. You got to be careful the company you keep Dylan over there now.
Yeah. I never let him get too comfortable.
On today's episode, we are joined by friend of the show, Coach Larry Blunt. LB shares his unique and illustrious journey to make it where he is today. How it was coaching one of the best high school basketball teams of all time, life decisions, philosophies, and much, much more. Stay tuned, and as always, wash your legs in the shower. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Bresh Crew podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Grant, along with my co-host, Mark Gwynn. Today, we got a very special guest on the podcast, of the always positive, the always passionate. I'm sure he'll have his own podcast one day called Coaches Only or something like that. We got LB, Coach Larry Blunt in the building. What's up, Larry?
Not much. Dylan, thank you so much for having me. Mark, looking forward to an exciting episode. And I don't know, Coaches Only. I'm from the country. I think maybe Farmers Only at the best for me.
Farmers Only. So where are you right now? Where are you located?
We're in Des Moines, Iowa, capital city of the state of Iowa. Booming city, really nice people. And thus far, we've only had a half of snow, I'll say. So it's been pretty good. A little bit, but not much snow.
Well, we got the usual, as you know. We get hammered.
Certainly.
We get hammered up
Snow
here.
days, baby. Snow days. I miss those days. No bus days.
We had a lot. I want to start with your football career, actually. I want to start with kind of how that came about. I believe you were a quarterback, if my memory serves correct.
Absolutely. Worst school quarterback in school history at James Madison. It was a great experience. Met some people that really hold a dear dear place in my heart, and really my story is unique. I played Division II my first 2 years, and I grew 4 inches at the end of my freshman year, so that would be my first year. And I wanted to chase and pursue the whole Division I football route like my father, so I transferred from D2 to D1. It was a great experience. That team went on to win a national championship. In the second game of the year, I decided that I was going to quit, and it really changed my life. I mean, it's what really has driven me to do what I'm doing. It was the first time in my life where I hadn't been one of the better players on the team, and I didn't really handle it very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where my passion for just being able to work with young people and realizing what this game can do for you on both ends of the spectrum, the guys that really play a lot, but also the guys that don't get much attention, that may not be and having the role that they really wanted and what they thought they were signing up for.
So, Coach, you've obviously had an interesting journey transitioning into coaching, right? Going from a college football player. What have you taken away from your experience playing football to help you transition into coaching basketball?
Certainly, Mark. Well, I think first and foremost, for me, our game can change lives. I was really fortunate. My father played Division I football at Virginia Tech. My mom has a PhD from Virginia Tech as well, and she was an administrator. When I went to school, I was going to be a lawyer. That was my goal. I was going to study law or political science. And my mom made me substitute teach. It was either that or go work on the farm. So I guess I was being lazy and decided to substitute teach. But in that experience that summer, I fell in love. I mean, it was at that point I was playing football. So I was about 240 pounds and I was strong. I had a full head of hair. And I could relate with a young student, and I'll never forget. That young man was trying to do long-term division, and he was written off. He was the kid that everyone said he would never amount to anything. He was the troublemaker. He was the kid that was getting in a ton of trouble. And that building that relationship with him and helping him turn his life around, it really changed my life. And it made me say, the heck with all the lawyers and the nice suits. I'm not sharp enough or cool enough to wear those. And I just learned in that moment, in that couple of months being there substitute teaching, that you can really have an impact. And then if you throw a ball into it where, now you have a bit of a dangling carrot where you can say, well, if you don't do your work, we won't let you travel or we won't let you play. I think that's just a very powerful tool. And that's kind of why I got into coaching. That's the long version of it.
Dude, I learned long division at age 25. So I'm no better with this stuff.
I just
Why?
use this calculator.
Yeah, now, yeah, exactly. Now you got gadgets to help you. But why did you decide to choose coaching basketball over kind of the family business of football?
Well, football players are crazy, and I'm not excluding myself from that. I played a ton of football, and to be honest, where I grew up, football was king. We had a lot of success on my high school football team. We went to state championships, and there's a ton of tradition at Southampton County. There's not much. It's football and farming.
Hmm.
Uh, but growing up, I kind of got to the crossroad, and I had to make a decision whether I wanted to play college football or college basketball. And for me, it's always been my passion. I think it's more conducive to my personality. We have 13 players on a scholarship as compared to having 100 on a football team. I think it's much easier to manage 17 or 18 guys, being able to build relationships, getting to know them. So for me, I think it's much, it fits my personality more. And I also think you start getting the 0 degree days and -5, I'll use Celsius, the Canadian podcast. But you start going, -5, -6, and then you get in the summer months, it's +30, +40. I think I'd rather stay in a climate control gym as well.
I hear that. I hear that. Um, where? So where did you start coaching basketball then? Was that in your hometown?
Oh, that's been a crazy journey. So I played football at James Madison, and then my senior year, as I mentioned, I quit. And
Hmm.
I really had to do it for two reasons. One, I had to do an internship to be able to graduate, and I would have had to come back for an entire another year. So that was one of the things that kind of led me to my decision. I actually went in and I like to think I handled it as well as I could. I spoke with the coaches, but I worked in the mayor's office, and that was kind of when I started really missing sport. I missed the camaraderie, the brotherhood, just in the locker rooms, the competitiveness, the competition piece. So halfway through that first year of being out of football, which was my fourth year in college, I was interning in the mayor's office, and I basically begged the local high school to let me coach. I went over 3 times. They told me no. I went over a fourth time. They said no, and I just kept coming back. So they either were going to call the police on me for trespassing, or they were going to give me an opportunity.
Yeah.
And in that fourth or fifth time going over, they allowed me to be able to get my start, and I'm incredibly grateful. I got to coach the junior varsity team, and it was when my passion for the game just really, really increased. So it was a really unique experience that first year, kind of cracking in as a fourth year college student or university student.
So, Coach, among your coaching journey, you spent some time with the Oshawa Power. Now, for me, as an Oshawa boy, it was I was around, and Dylan and I were together at Durham College when the team was first introduced, and it was just like a kid on Christmas because I finally got a professional team in my hometown, right? So, tell me about your experience coaching them and in that new league with the Oshawa Power. Just talk about that experience.
It was awesome, and Mark, I'll apologize. We had some pretty spirited practices on the campus over at Durham College.
Yeah.
But no, it was neat. I mean, my journey has been really cool. I was coaching Division III basketball, and I was in my fifth year there. And a gentleman that I worked for prior to that. So my fourth year coaching D3, a gentleman that I worked for prior to that, he was actually the head coach. Robert Bricky is his name. And Coach Bricky called and he said, look, I have a few things at home that I need to deal with. So I'm transitioning from the role of the head coach into a role of management and kind of the front office side of basketball. He said, you can be a head coach for the first time, but there's only one caveat. You have to be here tomorrow morning. So obviously I'm in Virginia. It's about a 16-hour drive. I go in, I shut the door, and I say, Coach, I mean, we have a really good team at Hampden Sydney in our going into our fifth year, which, we're a 24, 25 win team, and we are having a lot of success. So I say, Coach, I got a chance to be a head coach, but I have to be in Canada tomorrow morning. And I'll never forget, I had a little Mercury Mountaineer. I called my mom, my dad. I threw everything I had in the car, which was not very much. And I started driving. I think I cried for the first 2 or 3 hours of the trip because I didn't really get a chance to kind of have some closure, really think about it. And away we go to Oshawa, man. I show up the very next day we have a game, so I don't know one player on our team's name. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know who can play. I don't know who can't. And we had a really good run. We were 17-10 going into the final stretch, and we had 4 or 5 injuries that we really couldn't get over the hump. But it was a great experience. I was coaching guys that had played for Hall of Fame coaches in the U.S. A lot of those guys were even older than I was at that point. I don't know much about basketball, so it was a great experience. I mean, we had some really, really competitive guys, and it was really, really a great experience, and is what gave me my opportunity, kind of my start in Canada.
So they kind of threw you into the fire in a way. Like, that's how you learned.
Well, that may have been an understatement. I was out there calling football plays, and they were kind of looking at me like I was speaking French.
Oh my God.
But we had a lot of fun. We were really competitive, and those guys, I really owe a lot to them because they really helped me get through that first year, and we really had a lot of success with a fun group of people.
So, Coach, just following up on that, if I'm not mistaken, you coached Brandon Robinson, who led the league in scoring the year you were there, correct?
Brandon came in. We traded him once I got there.
Okay.
So I did not get an opportunity to coach Brandon, but we played against him. I think he went to Summerside or PEI, if I'm not mistaken. And he's a very, very talented player. They were trying to stack the deck against us when we got there. Nonetheless, we had a lot of fun. I think we ended up beating those guys, so it was a whole lot of fun nonetheless.
So after Oshawa, I think that's when I met you at AI.
Correct. That story is
that's where the story begins for me. How did that opportunity present itself, or how did you find yourself going from college, pro, and then back to high school prep level?
It was really, as the good Lord is the only way that I can define or really be able to get my head around it. Our team folded in Oshawa. They moved the team and changed the ownership group to a Mississauga-based team. They played out of the Hershey Center. Mm-hmm. And at that point, the Tipping family was considering starting a pro team, obviously, which turned into the Brampton A's and then the Orangeville A's. And in that process, they were interviewing me and were going to give me an opportunity to interview for the job. But part of my deal was they wanted me to work out 13 or 14 guys that were there at the facility. And so I'm trying to get my head around it. I'm kind of trying to figure out what's going on. And they tell me that, I start asking, what is this? Like, who are these guys? You got young people. These are not pros. And then they explained, David Magley was there at that point, that they were trying to have a prep school team, and they wanted to have, 1 or 2 Division I players, and kind of their vision for being able to have a prep school team, which could kind of transition into the professional team, and kind of how that model kind of worked together, kind of a one-stop shop, if you will, for basketball. So at that point, I said, Mags and Jesse, I don't know if I really want to coach this pro team. My heart, my passion is working with younger people. And, we kind of got our wheels turning. And at that point, they had hired Brandon Lashowski to run Athlete Institute or coach that team. So I said, why don't we get together? If you guys have interest in that, let me get with some of the guys that I knew at that point, Tony McIntyre, Mike George, because I had some relationships and some ties to various people from my AAU and my high school or my college coaching experience. Why don't we see if we can put together another team and we can try to work towards, giving Canadians opportunities to stay in. And we kind of coined that term, stay in play. So it kind of evolved because they were really reaching out to see if I had I was interviewing to try to be their pro coach. And when I saw this high school opportunity, I said, no. The pro thing, you guys can handle that. I'll switch gears and go to the high school route.
Do you think that was one, I can't tell, I don't know if it is for sure, but was that one of, if not the first big Canadian high school prep program, or was there some existing previous to that? Like AAU excluded, because I know there was some great AAU teams before that.
Yes, there was a few. Charles had a Macros. Charles had a program that he ran at Bill Crothers. They had a lot of success. I think Roe Russell had a program, phase 1, that they did on both sides of the border. Terry Upshaw ran a Rita program. But I think our program, when we really got it up and running, I think it really helped to uh, kind of kick off the movement of having sustained programs and being able to, you know, help Canadians and their families understand that, look, you can get the same exposure, same training, same competition. And, I think that group that we had was pioneers for that movement kind of moving forward.
That's still like I was there. I think 3 to 4 years after you left. I think before I left, and that year when you and Brandon were both coaching different teams, and when you guys had the star-studded teams for sure, that was still the greatest. Like that was the greatest year in my opinion. Like we couldn't recapitulate that time. We had great coaches after and great trainers. Like I made great relationships with like Nate Johnson and Chad Warren, some great guys, but just that year is like unexplainable. And like everyone I talked to that was part of that kind of development says the same thing, including like pro players today. So what was it about that time that made it so, I guess, special for everyone involved?
Well, I think, there's a lot of things that made it work at the level it was. People like yourself that really, selflessly were all in it as all one. I mean, we had a really just dynamic group of people, the Tipping family, the resources that they contributed, their vision. Obviously Tony McIntyre, Brandon. I mean, you can go through. Agata was driving the buses. I mean, Will was strength training. I mean, and it's countless names. And I think it was you had a lot of people that were taking a chance on a program with something that kind of went against conventional wisdom. And conventional wisdom said, you have to go to the U.S. to arrive or to be able to kind of build your brand. And, guys like Jamal, they said, wait a minute, his family, Roger, his mom, Sylvia, you can go through the whole group. Jalen Poyser's father, Mark, Kyle's father, Joe Alexander and his mom. I mean, you can go through and you can go top to bottom with that whole group in year one with 10 players. I mean, it was just really, really, I think they had such a chip on their shoulder and their level of focus was kind of, it was a really narrow focus with we have to do whatever we have to do to be able to create this opportunity for people coming behind us.
Mm.
And then I think when Thon came that second year, and I had a relationship with Ed Smith, who was Thon's guardian. I mean, you just talk about like all the stars kind of aligning. You have this group of 10 young people that were very, very talented, that were willing to work at it, that were really selfless. I mean, our schedule, our travel was unreal in that first year. We would land in DC. We had a game where we had multiple delays. We literally showed up. I know there's a lot of controversy in the U.S. over the anthem and kneeling and those things. I mean, we literally showed up as they were playing the last stanza, and we were putting on shorts as we were running to the court and played that game, lost it. And then the very next game, Jamal hits a buzzer beater. Then we drive to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is like a 4-hour drive, turn around, come back. And then those guys, we got back to Buffalo on the last flight, which lands, let's call it 11:30. We drive from Buffalo, New York, back to Mono, Ontario, to near Hockley Valley. And our guys were getting back 2:15, 2:30 in the morning by the time you get to the border and get everything unpacked. And they pop right back up at 7:30 to go to class. And it was just, I mean, the bond, the brotherhood that they built in those first couple of years, I mean, for me, I'll never forget it. And I'm just thankful. I think we had 30 Division I players, and 6 of those guys were playing the NBA or are playing in the NBA. Like it was kind of unheard of or unprecedented the level of success we had. And that credit is spread out amongst a lot of people. It really takes a village.
So, Coach, I want to get into the fundamentals of the game. I know because you've coached in so many different situations, the approach changes based on the stage you're on. But if you have what's your ideal go-to philosophy on offensive defense? What sort of system do you prefer to run?
I think you kind of hit on it. It kind of varies depending upon the group you have.
Right.
Here being in the Midwest and working with Coach DeVries, our head coach, we really value skill, guys that can really shoot, that really know how to play the game. And it's really, we've had a lot of success. We've won 20 games back to back for the second time in school history. We won a conference championship in our first year, and that's the way we play here. It really is fun to watch. We try to score 1,000,000 points and maybe 1,000,001 if we can. But where we were at Canisius prior to this, we were much more up tempo, much more athletic. We really got out in the passing lanes and we pressed a little bit and we denied and we kind of created some more tempo from a defensive standpoint. And we won 24 games there and won a championship. From my experience being at Orangeville, I think it was a little bit unique and different. And I learned a lot through that experience from guys like, Roger Murray, who's Jamal's father, Ed Smith, who's Stan's guardian. And he's done a great job. Like, winning and development, in my opinion, don't always run parallel. And I think guys that are in high school that are trying to go on to be professional athletes, to play Division I college basketball, CIS, OCA, like whatever the level, if their goal is to play basketball beyond those 2 or 3 years that they're going to be in the high school or respective prep ranks, I don't necessarily think that winning goals that they are always aligned. Like, sometimes you may have to lose a game in the interest of helping someone develop. And I think that, depending upon the place, I think depending upon the team you have, the situation, the old adage that there's a time and a place, I think that's really, really, it really applies to basketball from my experience.
For sure.
Speaking of your practices, they were crazy. Number one, they were insane. I'd never seen practices like that, and I don't know if I ever will again. You mentioned Brandon Levzovsky. You guys were both really good at your jobs. I want to credit you both for that. But there were definitely very different environments in the practices. And I remember you had a drill that was like, since we had so many baskets in the gym, there would be like finish in traffic, take a charge, dive for a ball, like all this stuff encapsulated in one like drill, and the whole team would just be amped the entire time. Where does like that kind of unorthodox practice, I guess, development come from?
Well, I think, with our team, we knew that we were going to be up against it. I think for us, we played the majority of our games, especially in the first 2 years. The majority of our schedule was in the U.S., trying to generate some exposure and create some opportunities for our young people. So we wanted to create and practice an environment that was going to be tougher than what they were going to experience when they go to, for example, Lalamere. There's 800 people in the gym. The referees are going to do everything in their power to make sure that the Bears weren't going to come out with a win. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that's a whole nother story. But like the drills kind of originated. Our goal was to make practice harder than what the games were going to be. But at the same time, we wanted to make it fun. And I've personally always been a huge proponent of when you can do something and you can enjoy it, you're going to be better at it. And, to the guys' credit, they took a lot of pride in tough practices. A lot of them, I still get text messages to this day laughing about how many sprints we ran because somebody got caught skipping class.
Yes.
But those were some great moments. I can say this, like the guys made it fun. They really attacked it the right way. And it was, for us, I just think that was our goal. We wanted to be really spirited. We wanted to have a lot of enthusiasm. And, they always say that nothing great's ever accomplished without enthusiasm. So that was our goal. And our staff, we wanted to be more energetic than they are, or they were. And that was something that we really took a lot of pride in every day, just trying to bring our best, because ultimately, when you start getting them early mornings and late nights, I mean, if you don't have passion about what you're doing, it's gonna be really, really hard to be as good as you can be.
Yeah, it's gonna show. It's gonna show for sure.
So, Coach, you've dealt with a ton of different young players at different stages in high school and college or whatever. What are some specific traits that you see in players that just let you know immediately that they're gonna excel?
That's a great question, Mark. I mean, I think the thing that over my years of doing this, and this is year 15, at various levels, D3, D2, I've coached AAU, professional for a bit, high school. I think the number one thing that allows people to be successful is just competitiveness. And I think competitive people in any industry, they find a way, because I think when you're competitive, that means you're willing to put the work in. I think that's the number one trait. If you're competitive, you'll find a way out. We have guys, and I've coached guys that aren't necessarily very skilled. You may say he doesn't shoot it very well, but then I've coached other guys that you may say, okay, he's not very athletic, and another guy may not be quick enough laterally. But those guys that have those skill sets that they may be deficient, if they have a competitive drive, those guys have found ways to impact winning, and ultimately they played a lot, even though they've been deficient in certain areas, or they've had some deficiencies that that they needed to address. If you can compete I think one of the biggest things from high school kids, when you leave in high school and prep school and you're trying to make the transition from there to college, is just that competitiveness, obviously, but also just the urgency of it. Like, everything is watched, scrutinized. I mean, we have 4 coaches on our staff that watch everything. That's not counting our managers, our graduate assistants. Like, if you leave practice to use the little boys' room, like, we know. And I mean, in fact, there's a young man that leaves once at practice, and we all take the clips and we send it to each other. And it's kind of a running joke. So, like, I think people have to understand that, like, everything is just the urgency and the competitiveness, and how much pressure comes with that. I think that's the people that can channel that can have some success.
How do you help a player with the pressure of it all? Like, even like when you were with AI, there was probably a lot of pressure on, Jamal, Fawn, and guys like that, because they were getting thousands. I've seen your office, thousands and thousands of envelopes every day from every school in the country. How do you help them kind of guide them through that pressure, or give them the skills to equip them with the skills for that kind of pressure?
I think the guys, I mean, a lot of it, and I always use the saying, you have to trust your work. And, guys like Jamal, his father, Roger, did a lot with him mentally, just working with him to learn to compartmentalize those moments. Thon Maker, his guardian, Ed Smith, he did a really good job of helping him to do the same, with putting them in moments that would help them to simulate what they were going to go through. And you can go through that whole group. I mean, there's a lot of pressure when you have a person on your team that's getting recruited by these schools, and you see the shoebox full of letters that may have, Kyle Alexander on it. But then, Javon Blair may be looking to say, okay, wait a minute, where are my letters?
Mm-hmm.
But we always use the phrase to trust your work. And if you put the work in it, I think that goes back to that competitive piece. If you are competitive, you're going to be willing to put all the work that's required in. And if you put the work in, when the pressure rises the most ingrained behaviors come out. And that's a quote that I stole from my last boss, Reggie Witherspoon at Canisius College. And I think the more I do that, I think that resonates. I mean, because the pressure does rise, and then whatever you've worked on, especially if you've worked on it and you put yourself and you practice in conditions that may be more challenging than what the game is, I think you can fall back on your training and really trust it. And then I think lastly, I think this is important as well, and I really believe this, I just think the enthusiasm, the having fun with it, like not taking it overly serious, because ultimately it's a game that we grew up playing when we were 5, 6, 7 years old, and we couldn't even get the ball to the bucket or to the net. But like, I just think if you can find joy in it and you can trust your work, they kind of go hand in hand, and then you don't even think about the pressure. You just get out there and you're locked into the 94 by 50 foot, box that we get a chance to play in and enjoy our game.
Mm.
So, Coach, one of the things when I've spoken with other players and other coaches in the past, one of the things about winning is obviously winning is the objective for anybody, or at least it should be. But before you figure out how to win, you've got to learn how to lose. I've been hearing that again and again. So, as far as dealing with tough losses with some of the teams that you've coached, how do you go about that? How do you teach them how to deal with the loss in order to transition into winning basketball?
Well, I think in anything, I mean, failure, most people have more failure than success. I mean, I think that's, if you look at the shots that Jordan missed along the way, he lost early in his career before he learned to win. I think going back to being a competitor, I mean, I think it's ingrained in me with how I was raised, that losing I don't deal very well with it. I don't like losing.
Me
Uh,
either.
I mean, I can remember a couple of our trips coming back from various places, and you could hear kind of a pin drop on cotton. I mean, it was some pretty tense moments on some of those bus and plane rides back. But I also think, especially at that level and even this level, I think if you can learn from those losses, I mean, I think there's once the emotion kind of comes down and you give yourself, a few minutes or hours or maybe even days, depending upon who the loss is to. I think you can pull a lot of, you can learn a lot, especially if you're willing to put the time into the film study. Also just learning that moment. Okay, if I get a chance to be in this moment again, how am I going to slow it down and play it back? I think those are techniques, and I think in anything you do, I always tell our guys, especially young guys here, when we're working them out and helping to train and develop them, especially some of the guys that are not playing yet. If you're doing a ball handling drill and you don't lose it 2 or 3 times and have some failure, you're not going hard enough. And if you are going to make the game winning shot, then you're probably going to have to miss a few to be able to put yourself in a position where you learn how to do it. So I always look at those and I try to find the positive in it, because I think when you do lose, as long as you learn from it, you get better and you can take the next steps. Then I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing.
What
But that may be a week or two before I get to that point, if I'm being honest.
What advice do you have for someone, maybe in any profession, kind of taking kind of that leap and doing something that's not kind of planned out for you, like being kind of righteous? So you chose coaching in a family that has PhDs, and like you had a lawyer in your forefront view for a while. What do people, or what can people take away from your experience to say, like, hey, this is what I did to take this leap? Because a lot of people see coaching and it's like they see the big NBA contracts, but they don't see everything before that. And there might be a lot of years where you're not really making any money. So how do you just stay focused and keep focusing on that grind or your goal?
Well, I mean, I think my story hopefully can inspire. I'm coached. So when football ended, it was the worst. Again, I'm gonna try to tell this as quickly as I can. I'm from the South, and I went to a Southern Baptist church. So you better eat a good breakfast, because you're probably gonna be in church all day. So I'm gonna do my best to keep this story short, so you guys will have me back. The worst day of my life was when I did not play in that football game. And I'll never forget the walk. I walked back from our football field. I mean, it's 40, 50,000 people that come watch a football game, and I'm just dejected in the dumps. Like, worst place I've ever been in that space of my life. And I remember that long walk, and I was playing all the scenarios through my head. I'll never quit anything. Am I going to quit? Like, I'll never forget that. And then I can remember going to work in the mayor's office, and I kind of fell in love with this high school and this whole idea of coaching basketball. And I'm like, man, I don't want to wear a suit to work every day working in the mayor's office. I mean, I love the people there. They were great people. I learned a lot of professional skills, and it was a great experience. But once I realized I wanted to coach basketball in that year, then that very next year, I went, and one of the guys that was at James Madison, where I went to school, he was one of the assistant basketball coaches, Robert Brickey, who obviously coached the Power. So I went into Robert Brickey's office and I said, Coach, I'm coaching this high school team. Like, I've fallen in love with basketball. And I got to know Coach Robert Brickey because I would play basketball with the old guys. Like, when they had 9 and they needed one more that wouldn't foul and hurt the old guys, like, they let me play. So I had a relationship. I say, Coach, look, I fallen in love with coaching high school basketball. I think I want to make a career out of this, and I want to have a chance to kind of grow in this industry and move up. So I said, look, I'm coaching, working in the mayor's office. I'm coaching high school. I said, Coach, I'll come over here. I'll write letters. I'll break down film. Whatever you don't want to do, I'll do. Like, I'll watch the backboards. I'll do whatever you need me to do. So lo and behold, that 1 year passes. He gets a head coaching job at a D2 school in North Carolina. So I'm in this position where, like, now I'm begging him, Coach, I've got 2 years of experience, 1 in high school, 1 D3 coaching women. Can I come with you to Raleigh, North Carolina, and be an assistant for you? And he says, look, I don't have a position. And then so he calls back about 2 weeks later after he tried to hire about 20 people. They all turned him down. And he said, sure, you can come. So me, I'm green, don't know much about how this whole profession works. I go to my boss in the mayor's office and say, I want to turn my 2 weeks in. it took about 2 months from the time I turned my letter of resignation in until they hired me. So I'm sleeping in my truck in Raleigh,
Oh,
North Carolina,
shit.
between giving up a job, making some money, and now I don't have a job. But because I really wanted to coach basketball, I sacrificed. I put the few things I had and I stayed in my truck. So we were there for 2 years. And in that 2 years, we didn't have a lot of success. My first experience, like being with like not being really good, and they fired us. So I go to a D3 school, Farmville, Virginia, middle of nowhere, and it's a great school, great situation. I worked with D. Vick, who was a head coach there, a great friend of mine. We built the program back up, had a lot of success. But because I had a relationship with Bricky, because I slept in my car, I took a chance and I just rolled a dice and gambled. He was the reason that I got to Canada, to be able to have this opportunity that created, kind of these opportunities for all of us, for the players, for myself. And you can just go through the whole group of people that this game has kind of opened doors for. But when we got fired with the Oshawa Power, I'm in a new country. I don't know anyone. I'm sleeping on the floor. And at that point, I was working with Tony McIntyre and Mike George, who were running CIA Bounce. And you guys know the Canadian geography.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't afford to drive from Oshawa because I don't have a job. I'm doing odds and ends, training young people on the side to make a little bit of money. But I couldn't afford to drive from Oshawa, Ontario, all the way back to Brampton to go practice at this soccer center. I couldn't afford to drive back and forth.
Yeah.
So I sleep in my car in the parking lot at the soccer center, and then we would have practice. I go to practice, et cetera, shower in the soccer center facility. And then obviously this is in the spring, so I'm sleeping in my truck to kind of continue to chase my dream in a whole new country where I don't know anyone. And in fact, I meet my wife in the process, and her and her family, thank God, they wouldn't let me sleep in my truck anymore. They moved me in. So it was just like, I mean, I know it's a long way of saying, but it was a 10-year journey to go from working in the mayor's office, giving basketball up. And it took me 13 years to go from there to my end goal of having a chance to coach Division I. And I ended up sleeping in my truck on 2 separate occasions because, I really was willing to do whatever it took to have an opportunity to chase my dreams as well.
Jesus.
So, Coach, I mean, as you said, you've had an incredible journey, and where you are now, you're coaching with the Drake Bulldogs, and things seem to be going really well there. What happens next? What's the plan going forward?
Well, I'm just trusting in the Lord. I mean, and I know that's cliche, and again, I grew up in Southern Baptist Church, but I really mean that. Like everywhere, every stop that we've made, I think I found peace in just doing the best that you can to help people. And I really believe, when I was at Orangeville, our goal every day was to try to get every one of those young people a scholarship. And that was our goal. Like, that's all we cared about, to be honest. We could lose every game, and if we got everyone a full scholarship to go play basketball and get a free education with the game, then it was perfect. And doing that for 3 years opened up the Canisius opportunity. And I'll say this, like, I know Dante won't mind. And if he does, like, he can put me on the line. I'll run my sprints.
I love Dante. I know. Okay.
But it's really fitting, and I always say this, Dante and Selvin came in, and they probably were the 2 least likely to get a scholarship. Dante, he really worked his behind off academically for 2 years. His mom yelled at me because I wouldn't let him travel the first year because he didn't do some work. And he called, I think I want to say 3 months ago, and he called to say, look, I'm going to graduate from Canisius in 4 years. I just want to thank you. But because we put so much effort into Dante, helping him earn a scholarship, he and Selvin, that was the reason I ended up getting my first Division I opportunity, because we put so much time into them and helping develop them. And I just thought it was fitting. At Drake, it's the same. If I'll stay as long as they'll have me. We've had a lot of success, and I just enjoy really giving back. We're on pace to have everyone graduate. We won a lot of games, and it's some great people here. And in this profession, I've learned that if you're working with good people, our head coach, Coach DeVries, our administration, like, it's just great people. And I'm not in a hurry to go anywhere because, we have an opportunity to do some really special things.
You mentioned you got everyone kind of a scholarship on those teams you and Brandon coached. I remember specifically one practice, because we always had scouts in and out of that gym for the time you were there. There was one practice where only one head coach or scout came from a school in the States. And this kid on your team had the practice of his life. Literally the practice of his life. I witnessed the whole thing. He was hitting everything. He ended up, I don't want to say his name, but he ended up getting a full ride off that practice because I think everyone else was already committed almost. And it wasn't one of the players you mentioned already. But everyone was kind of already committed. He wanted to get someone. He came all the way to Canada. He's like, I want to get someone. Practice of his life. Few months go by and you get a call from that coach saying, like, we just gave this kid a full ride scholarship, 4 years, and he's not producing the way he thought. Like, what's going on? Did you get that call? Like, did that happen? And how did you react to that?
Well, I think that is a call, for various reasons. And, I think reflecting and trying to get better, there's things that I did not know with regards to Division I coaching. And I think you can't understand that until you come on this side. And I think in that space, like, I don't think I did as good of a job as I should have and needed to do in helping to prepare that young man. And quite frankly, a few of them I didn't do I failed them with fully preparing them for what they were getting into. And I think that's, from my experience, the challenge that comes from not having this experience being on this side. And I will also say conversely, I think unless you've spent time coaching high school, prep school, coaching AAU, like, there's things on the opposite side that people may not factor into it. And I know from my experience, I tend to gravitate towards the players that may not be coming in and producing right away. I think that's because of my experience. Like, I didn't have anyone to grab me and say, Larry, look, you need to stop doing this, this, and this. And one of it was partying. One was probably hanging out, chasing, like, girls. And also, like, I didn't understand how much work was required to be really good at college athletics. So, like, a lot of it, and it's a variety of reasons. I mean, those were, as a young, immature country boy that was going to a college campus that had more people on that college campus than I had in my whole town. Like, it was pretty, I mean, I wasn't equipped. And so I think, when we there were calls from guys that we received saying, look, this person isn't as advertised, or, he may not have produced at the level. And that's why there's 1,600 transfers in Division I every year.
Yep.
But I also think, I think the really good coaches, I think the people that have the most success in their program, if that person has proven that they can do it once, I think it's on us as coaches to find creative ways to motivate them, to reach them where they are, to be able to help them be able to have an impact. Because ultimately we recruited them. We saw them do it one day. So what can we do to get them to kind of repeat that behavior and sustain that behavior?
So you're saying if you were that coach who gave someone a full ride off that one viewing, you would have kind of gravitated towards them, just kind of, because that's who you like helping the best. You feel most rewarded out of helping that type of player.
100%. I mean, and that's not, I wouldn't say that will be the industry norm. I mean, there's so much pressure that comes with these jobs, Division I jobs. I mean, everyone's trying to come here, and one, we feed our family with our game. But also there's people that are in this industry that are trying to move up. So and we only get 13 scholarships. So if you have, player A that is not producing at the level, or player number 1 that's not producing at the same level as player number 13, then, that means you're only running with 12 guys that you think can help your program. A lot of people would just say, look, we'll get rid of number 1 and bring in a new number 1. And because, that's what we can do. And then the chips kind of fall where they may. But I don't tend to subscribe to that theory. I look at it like, kids get better. I mean, I really believe that. That was what I enjoyed the most about my experience at Orangeville was, Jamal was really special. A lot of the guys that we took that went on to have successful careers, they were new to basketball, or they went to the U.S. and they didn't have a great experience. And a lot of those guys that were there that really trusted the process and their families, like, they got better. And I think if you look at those guys from the first day they arrived to the last day they left, I mean, I think there was a pretty consistent trend of development, and a consistent trend in guys really changing their bodies thanks to the performance staff. Academically, I was really most proud that all those guys really did well academically, and they were good citizens. And
Mm-hmm.
One time, a couple of them got caught skipping, and we ran from the res. We got up one morning, I think at 4:30, 4:45, and we ran from the res out by Hockley Valley all the way to the AI facility. We had Keenan in the van behind us driving, and we were jogging, and then we had a full practice afterward. So, like, those are the stories that I miss the most. I mean, I remember running with them. My knees were sore for about 3 weeks, but nonetheless, it was a great experience. And I mean, that's what I enjoyed the most. I mean, and now those guys, some of them are getting ready to, start their professional careers. Some of them are starting to get married. Some of them are playing, are getting into coaching. And that's the most fun when you get texts from them on birthdays, or you get, man, do you remember when in a group chat that ... and some of the stories that were told a little bit different we're starting to get the real version of the stories. So
Oh no.
yeah, it was, but the statute of limitations is expired, so I think we're pretty good. They don't have to do any more running.
Before we let you go, what's the single best piece of advice you've gotten from another coach?
Wow, that's a great question. Single best advice. I think one that's probably meant the most is that I think this is probably stuck out, is that you need way more friends in this industry, in this profession, than enemies. It's such I think multiple reasons. One, you're at Orangeville, you have a great facility, great setup, a lot of really, really like elite people, elite resources. The Tippin family, they provided incredible opportunities for a lot of people. And now all of a sudden you have all these elite players. You got some of the best kids in North America and really across the world for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you can stack that team up the second year with any team in the history of basketball and in the world probably. And now you get all this talent, and all of a sudden you have all these people that want access to the talent. And if you rewind 365 days before that, you get this team with 10 players. And now, mind you, all of those guys signed a Division I scholarship the following year. So you're calling all these coaches in the U.S. saying, look, man, we have some really good players. They're young. They're Canadian grade 10s. But you need to come check them out. Like I'm telling you, they're really good. Nobody returns your call.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me wanted to coach Division I. So I'm like, man, I just return my call. Like, and none of these people want to call. So you fast forward 365. Now Thon shows up. Jamal is becoming Jamal. And now the world's taking notice. Kyle, Alonzo, Jelani, Dante, you can go through the whole group. I mean, it's 12 Division I players. And now all of a sudden everybody becomes your best friend. And that was hard to deal with because these people that you really wanted to tell them where they could go, and it wasn't to heaven. You're their best friend. And then so all those guys commit. You name it. We got, Rutgers, you got Georgetown, you got Kentucky, you can go through the whole list. They're everywhere across the country. So then the following year, that third year, we got Ignis, we got Eugene, we got Khalif. I mean, we got a whole nother set of Division I players. And so now all those people that you were calling the year before, I mean, and trying to convince them, look, man, I'm telling you, just trust me. We got another really good group. They don't take your call. And so I was really frustrated. That was something that was hard for me to deal with. And then people would start calling, I would hit ignore, and I didn't really handle it well. And I had a mentor of mine who called me, and he said, Larry, he said, they call me LB. He said, LB, he said, we need to talk. And I was like, like this, we need to talk. Those are never good words. And he sat me down and he said, listen, like in this profession, you need way more friends than enemies. And he said, you have to be professional. You want to make sure you follow up with people. And that stuck with me because when I left Orangeville and I came and I worked at Canisius, a lot of those people did the same things. They wouldn't return your calls. They take 2 weeks to respond to a text, etc. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden we play somebody that they play, or they may have interest in somebody at Orangeville, and now your phone rings and that same person calls. I think that's the most challenging piece, is how do you deal with them? Do you do the right thing, and are you a good friend, and are you, or are you just holding a grudge against them and being bitter? So long way of saying, I think you treat people the way you want to be treated, because you need way more friends in this profession, than enemies. And that's how I am anyway. I just think if the world would be a much better place if we all treated everyone the way we wanted to be treated. That's the long way of saying it.
Coach, I just want to say, first off, pleasure meeting you, despite the circumstances. thank you so much for sharing your story and talking game with us. I mean, this was really cool, and we should definitely do this again. But this was awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. And
Yes,
Dylan,
sir.
I really appreciated this platform and this opportunity. And if I can ever do anything for you guys, families, I really enjoy helping people with this game. And I pray that you and your family stay safe. Man, this is crazy. Hopefully we're closer to the end than the beginning, but I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yes, sir.
I hope so. Thanks a lot, LB. I can't wait to see what you do next. Can't wait to have you on again. Congrats on getting married. I remember when you guys got engaged, so congrats on that. Haven't seen you since then, but
best
thanks.
recruit I've ever gotten.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me say it louder so she might. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, thanks a lot, LB. This is another episode of the Bresh Group podcast. Tune in next time.
Yes, sir.
Take care, Larry. We'll keep in touch for sure.
Dylan, be good. Make sure you keep those stories classified. Some of the ones you got on the inside.
All right, see you, brother.
Take care,
Coach. Brother. Y'all be well.
You too.
Thanks for watching. Since you're here, why not take the time to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell. Also check out Bresh Crew on Spotify, Spreaker, TikTok, and Instagram. And that's all I got.